Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Welcome into this loving community of seekers, people striving to live with integrity, nurture wonder, and inspire the actions that transform us and transform the world. Welcome to you, whoever you are, wherever you are joining us from. Many communities spread out all over, perhaps even all over the world, but here in one sanctuary together. I'm the Reverend Julia Hamilton, and I'm delighted that you have decided to take this time to be here this morning to shake off some of those raindrops, take advantage of this respite from the storms between the rain here as we gather. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors or friends and family members we have joining us this morning. We would love to get to know you better and help you get connected to the Unitarian Society. So if you're here in person, you can stop by the welcome table after the service or have some coffee and tea and conversation with us in Parish Hall and the courtyard. If you're joining us online, go ahead and say hello in the chat. We have a connection card online and here in person so that we can keep connected with you and help you know what's going on here beyond Sunday mornings in this very busy community as we start the new year. I'd like to highlight a couple of things that are keeping us busy all week long. We have coming up this Tuesday evening, our first installment of the Good Things Growing speaker series. This will be a fabulous evening hearing from Iris Rideau, a local winemaker with a wonderful way of connecting. It's going to be the launch of what we hope will be a series of events highlighting the good things that people in our community are doing. So please join us on Tuesday evening. This weekend is, of course, Martin Luther King Day weekend, and that means that the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee of Santa Barbara has been busy planning a host of events. And tomorrow, weather permitting, there will be a gathering at De La Guerra Plaza at 9 o'clock, a march up State Street at 10, and then a fabulous program at the Arlington Theater at 11. So the Arlington Theater program will be indoors, so no matter what the weather, you can join that one. And it's always a wonderful way to take some time to honor the work and legacy of Dr. King here in our community. If you'd like to know more about the congregation and maybe meet some other new folks, we have the second class of our Path to Membership class on January 26th. It's a Thursday evening. You're welcome to join us, even if you weren't able to attend the first class last week. Please come and join us for the second one. You'll learn a little bit about Unitarian Universalist history, get a chance to learn what it means to be a part of this congregation, and most importantly, get to know each other. So I hope you can join us there. And hopefully our Director of Religious Education, Charlotte Brigante, will also be joining us for this class. Charlotte has been out for the past 2 weeks working from home with a positive COVID test. So we are sending her lots of love, and we know we will see her back soon. We also have our connection circles starting up again this month. This is an opportunity to gather with a small group of folks twice a month to dive deep into reflecting on the theme of the month and sharing about your life. If you're looking for a way to connect, if that's one of your New Year's resolutions to get more connected, the connection circles can check that box for you and provide you with a small community that will be there for each other over the next few months to dive deeper into this work of growing together. And finally, speaking of ways to get connected, we are all about connection this January. I want to invite Julie Lope to come forward and talk about a project of our membership ministry team, our member bios, to let us learn a little bit more about each other.
Hi. Getting to know you is one of our themes this year at USSB. We have a standard directory of members with the names and the contact information. But now, getting to know you goes further to build our Unitarian Universalist community. Sharing a little bit about our lives can encourage new friendships and important connections. During the next several weeks, we're encouraging everyone in our congregation to fill out a short biography of your background, work, or your family, interests, skills, and your talents, and what you'd like to do just for fun. Some of you have already done it. We've got several, but some of you haven't done it yet. That short bio is exactly what we're requesting of you. And here are 2 ways that you can do it. The fastest and the easiest way is right now, today, after services here, Sally Hamilton and I are going to be in the parish hall, and we'll have computers with us, and we even have a couple of people are going to help us with it. You can enter it right then. The other way to do is to go to ussb.org. I'm not a big poster maker, but fortunately, there is a place. You just go to the first page and look for this. Push the button and it will pop up. Click the square that says Members Bios. There's a section where you check the boxes, you know, the little boxes that you check off. And there's also a section for further narrative about your personal story or anything you'd like us to know about you, your background, your interests, and things that might not fit tidily into those little boxes. The second way is to join Sally and me right now in Parish Hall, right after services, and we'll have the laptop computers. We also will have paper forms that you can take home and fill in and then drop them off in Eden's office. I'd love it if you'd like to do them right now with a cup of coffee and just sit down at one of the tables and fill it out, or one of the computers. And then we'll do the rest of the work and end them online. Last week, I spoke with a choir member that I've been singing with for years, and she was filling out one of the forms, and I had to say, you know, I've known you for 20 years, but I really don't know much about you. And now I'm eager to read her bio. Sally and I will be at the parish hall table with our computers and paper forms. If you haven't done it yet, please stop by now and do it now, or get a printed form, take it home right now. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you.
Thank you, Julie. And as a reminder, our membership ministry team is always looking for new folks to join in the project of welcoming each other to this community. It's an easy way. You don't have to have any experience. You can jump right in. It's an open door for all who would like to get involved. I invite you now to take a breath, to settle yourself wherever you are. Perhaps feel your back against the pew or your feet on the floor or against the chair where you're sitting. Allow yourself to arrive into this space, to this community, to this shared hour together as we let the sound of our bell connect us. I'd like to invite Gary Waltulin to come forward with our words for chalice lighting.
Good morning. The words for our chalice lighting today is from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Each week after we light our chalice, we take a moment to turn ourselves toward the good, to lift up things, changes in our world that are moving us toward beloved community, that are bending that arc. So this January, we are renaming that collective jar into which we put our hopes and our loves. We're calling it the change jar this year. Specifically thinking about those changes we see and the changes we hope to see in the world. They could be changes small in your life, like the search for a new job or welcoming a new family member into your family. They could be changes in the world, things that you see moving toward the kind of world we want to live in. So right over here, we're bringing back our physical change jar after a hiatus of 3 years. And right over here, every Sunday, there's going to be a little station with paper and pens and an opportunity for you to come up at any time before or after the service and make a note of the changes that you see in the world, the changes for good that you are longing for or that you are witnessing. And if you're joining us online, you can type those changes into the chat. And this will allow us at the end of this year, our future selves, to go back and look through the course of this year and reflect together on the changes we've seen in our world. And so this Sunday, for our collective contribution to our change jar, I want to lift up a dramatic change, and that is in the reservoir level at Kachuma Lake. Right? One of the changes we've been longing for, we've seen it rise dramatically and now overspilling to replenish the aquifers that sustain us. It is a joyful thing amidst all of the storm, all of the trouble that the storms have caused. This is something we can celebrate. And now let us celebrate together in song. Let us sing together. It's 1024 in the teal hymnal. It's Spirit Says Do, and Matthew and folks from our Justice Choir are going to help lead it. But this is one of those songs that you can really kind of, once you get the gist of, you can put the words down and just follow along as the words, one word changes verse to verse. So please rise in body and spirit and sing with us, Spirit Says Do.
Sing when the Spirit says sing. When the shout, when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout. Oh, you got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do alone. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
This morning we have a story about some people who shouted when the Spirit said shout. It was February 12th, 1960. Full of nerves and anxiety, 10 young college students and their advisor from Friendship Junior College held their heads up as they passed by cops and protesters lining the road to downtown Rock Hill, South Carolina. They were on a mission, and they were going to make a statement for racial equality. How did they plan on making this statement? They were simply going to walk into McCrory's variety store, sit down at the lunch counter, and wait to order lunch from the server. The thing is, they knew they were not going to get lunch on that day. The college students were Black, and they knew that simply by sitting at the lunch counter, which was segregated for white people only, they would be arrested. And no matter what the police did in that moment, they also knew that they would resist the urge to react with violence in turn. The sit-in movement now had started a year before in Greensboro, North Carolina. But then when African-American students would get arrested for sitting at whites-only counters, they would be able to post bail for about $100 or more. And over a year's time, this posting bail had become so costly, it was taking a toll on the funding for the civil rights movement. And so they needed to do something different, something that would make a serious statement. And so 9 out of the 10 students that marched to McCrory's decided to refuse to pay the bail. The first students that had ever done this. Sitting down at the lunch counter on that wintry Tuesday, the boys knew that they would be handcuffed and hauled out of the store and taken to jail, and that is exactly what happened. The students and their advisor were Willie Edward McLeod, James Frank Wells, Clarence Henner Graham, and I think we have a few photos now we can share of them. Clarence Henner Graham, Thomas Walter Gator, David Scoop Williamson, Robert Louis McCullough, Mac Carter Workman, Willie Thomas Dub Macy, John Alexander Gaines, and Charles Edward Taylor. And I think we have some photos of them sitting down at the counter, and then we also have a photo of them later on in life sitting at that same counter. Here we go. Some of them reunited. They became known as the Friendship Nine. Now, after the 10 were arrested, they spent the night in the Rock Hill jail, and I think we've got a photo of that as well, before they were put on trial on February 1st, 1961. None of the students or the adults that were helping them through the process wanted them to plead guilty. They were not guilty of breaking any law. They knew that they had done nothing wrong. They believed with all their hearts that they had every right to order a sandwich at a lunch counter. But the judge still found them guilty. The charges placed on them were trespassing and breach of peace. They were sentenced to $100 bail or 30 days of hard labor in York County Prison Farm. Only one student, Charles Taylor, asked to pay bail because he was afraid of losing his basketball scholarship. The rest refused to pay bail as a statement that they were not guilty. They became known as the Friendship Nine. Refusing to pay bail made a strong statement that they were not guilty of a crime. It also made the racist society and institution pay for keeping them in jail instead of the civil rights activists paying to bail them out. They were immediately taken to the prison farm and began serving time under a racist staff of police officers, which gave them a workload twice as much as any of the white prisoners. When the Friendship Nine had served more than half of their time at the prison camp, the authorities found some reason to put them into solitary confinement, to punish them further for their protest. The reasons for solitary confinement reported in the newspaper were not true. Some newspapers said that the men began to sing in their cells and refused to stop singing. The prison farm officials said that the boys refused to work. Quote, "They locked all 9 of us up in a 7-by-9-foot solitary confinement cell for 3 days with nothing but what we brought in there with us," said David Williamson. "One of the inmates snuck us a Baby Ruth candy bar, which we ended up splitting 9 ways. That experience brought us closer together." Beside that Baby Ruth that they shared, the Friendship Nine decided they would refuse to eat. They would go on a hunger strike, which was another way to protest, and also the bread that they were given was barely edible to begin with. Right after they were let out of this tiny cell after their 3 days, they were expected to get right back to the hard labor. Now remember, they'd been on a hunger strike, and they were still given almost twice as much work as the other prisoners. 2 days shy of serving their full sentence, the Friendship Nine were let out of the York County Prison Farm so that the press would not be able to cover their release. They were released early so there could be no cameras documenting the event. The prison did not want newspapers around. The prison guards and officials loaded up the men into a pickup truck and dropped them off a mile or so from Friendship College. No one knew that they were getting out early, so they had to walk back into town and to their homes. Letting them out in this way worked for the prison. There are barely any pictures of them leaving prison. The newspapers were not able to cover their release, but the legacy of the actions that the Friendship Nine and their 30-day sentence to hard labor was not forgotten. And in fact, it refueled the sit-in movement and inspired people in the civil rights movement across the nation. After a weary year of sit-ins and bailouts in the South throughout 1960, the Friendship Nine and their courageous decision to follow through on jail, no bail, re-energized activists and showed that anyone of any age had the power to start change. So I have to wonder, could they have done this alone? If it hadn't been the Friendship Nine, would it have been the Friendship One? I don't know. But I can't help but believe that being part of a community is what helped them find the courage to take these actions, to give them and those who followed their example the strength to keep going. I hope that we can continue to live into that legacy of courageous communal action. That's the story that I wanted to remember with you today. Let us sing our kids to their activities this morning, to their religious exploration classes. invite you to join me in a time of prayer and meditation, reflection, a moment to settle your soul. Go ahead and if you can, just take another breath. Attend to your body in this space. Attend to yourself, sharing this space with others. In from the wet and wild world we come after a week of storms. In this moment, let us set aside our sandbags, fold up the umbrellas, take off our protective layers, and unhunch our shoulders from the wind. We come into this sanctuary not to shut the world out, but to let it in. To let in the hope and the heartache. To let life fill us to the brim. To let love overspill the dams that we have built up to protect and conserve our tender selves. Spill over, my friends, with the longing for justice. Spill over with compassion and care. Spill over with the pent-up emotions of too many years of fear. Wash away the thoughts that keep your heart small and hard and modest. Wash away the lie that you are not enough, that love picks and chooses among us rather than falls across all of us like rain. Friends, let us learn from the rain, the indiscriminate rain, the egalitarian rain, the relentless rain. Let our hearts crack open like thunder, and the walls of separation be carried away in the flood. Let us see one another in these storms. See the grief, lay bare the loneliness, expose the injustice, reveal the joy, so that like rain loosens the soil, our hearts may loosen too. Shake and tumble into new formations, carve new riverbeds, new ways of being in this new year that remind us of the fundamental truth that like water, love is unstoppable and washes over us all. In this time of quiet reflection, may the reservoir of your spirit be replenished. So stay right where you are. Turn your attention to music once more. We're going to sing together, We Would Be One. It's number 318 as our reflective hymn this morning. We would be one.
We would be one as now we join in singing a hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on a way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We have a wonderful treat for our reading this morning that we'll talk a little bit more about later in the service. But our reading is a video of two members of the congregation in Atlanta reading two letters that were discovered in the archives of that congregation. Two letters from the Reverend Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. Two letters that were sent to the congregation in gratitude for the friendship and solidarity that that congregation showed to the King family during some very difficult times. And so I would like to share with you now these letters.
Dear Reverend King, in the rush of events surrounding the ceremony of our Alabama voting project, I neglected to express my deep gratitude for your response. Dear Reverend King, in the rush of events surrounding the ceremony of our Alabama voting project, I neglected to express my deep gratitude for your sponsorship of the dinner honoring me on January 26th. Please accept this belated note of appreciation. I must confess that few events have warmed my heart as did this occasion. It was a testimonial not only to me, but to the greatness of the city of Atlanta, the South, the nation, and its ability to rise above the conflict of former generations and really experience that beloved community where all differences are reconciled and all hearts in harmony with the principles of our great democracy and the tenets of our Judeo-Christian heritage. Sincerely yours, Martin Luther King Jr.
Dear Reverend Jean Pickett, thank you for your letter of October 24th, informing me of the contributions which you have received for the purpose of establishing a memorial to my husband. I am enclosing letters to the individuals you listed, and I would greatly appreciate if you would forward those to them. Please convey to the members of your congregation my deepest appreciation for their help at the time of my husband's death. Their concern and sympathy were demonstrated in many ways and made a tragic and confused period less trying for my family and me. It would have been impossible to provide for the many visitors in my home without the generosity of the members of the Atlanta Unitarian Church. The food, transportation, lodging, which they provided, will be remembered as a tangible demonstration of the brotherhood in action, which the Unitarian Church has always stressed. Opening, sorting, and handling the tremendous amount of mail sent to my children and me would have truly been an insurmountable task without the help of the people who responded to the Unitarian Church's appeal. Through the years, the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Atlanta has been a leader in bridging the gap between the white and Black communities. My family and I will always remember how warmly and willingly you extended friendship and love during our most difficult hour. Please know that we will always be grateful. Sincerely yours, Coretta Scott King.
A service trip for our youth, high school youth group to New Orleans. Some of our older members may remember that the 4 adults and 13 young people spent a week away to learn of different cultures, make connections, and in a small personal way, provide much needed help in getting a city still reeling after almost 6 years from the effects of Hurricane Katrina back on its feet. New Orleans is a melting pot of French, African, and American cultures. And today, over 60% of Orleans Parish is Black. Black households in New Orleans also have incomes 63% less than white households. None of our youth group had been to the South, let alone New Orleans, and at home had few interactions outside of their social groups. I was one of those 4 adults. When asked by a group of parents what were our goals for our teenagers, I answered, to leave with 13 young adults and return with 13 young adults, hopefully the same ones. Fortunately, we did. Yet each came back as a different person from the experience, including me. Sponsored by the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans, our goal was to learn about the city and its people and leave New Orleans a little better by having us being there. We chose a public service project working with an organization called Green Light New Orleans. Founded in 2006, the goal of the program was to have a positive environmental impact by increasing the use of energy efficient light bulbs, helping residents reduce their utility bills and reducing the carbon footprint of the community, in quotes. Volunteers were invited by appointment to homes in underserved neighborhoods, replacing hundreds of thousands of incandescent light bulbs with compact fluorescents, free of charge to the homeowners. GLNO is still doing good work today. Well, by the 4th day, the thrill of public service was taking a backseat to sightseeing and eating beignets. We had cleared debris and trash in parks, cut back weeds and empty lots, so a day of recreation would have been much more enticing. But that morning, we were given a list of families that had agreed to let us replace the light bulbs in their homes in a neighborhood a few miles from the church. Cleaning empty lots is one thing, but going into someone's home is a whole other matter. This is something personal and private space. This is where people eat. This is where people sleep and lives their days in and out. We got our instructions and in teams of 4 reluctantly set out to do good work. We came to our first stop, a small shotgun house on a side street. And a shotgun house, if you don't know, is a architectural form where there's a hallway down the middle and rooms on each side. And the purpose would be that if you shot a shotgun, you wouldn't hit any of the rooms, it would go right down the hall. We approached the door, knocked, our credentials in hand. We heard a click as the door unlocked, and an elderly woman soon appeared. She looked at our paperwork and with a warm smile, welcomed us into her home. It was small, orderly 4-room home with well-worn furniture. Pictures of family members adorned the walls, and a cat sauntered in from the kitchen. Soon it became apparent that this wasn't only about light bulbs and energy efficiency. It was about, what's the name of your cat? Can I pet her? How long have you lived in this house? Where did you go when Katrina came? Are those pictures of your grandchildren? Smiles and questions. It took about a minute to change a light bulb. Most places needed 10 light bulbs exchanged. We had 4 people to change them, yet we seldom got out in less than an hour, and then only to keep the schedule. Goodbyes and heartfelt thank yous were exchanged before we moved on to the next house on the list. Now each new home came with eager anticipation of the visit. These young people that went on the trip are now approaching 30 years old. They are adults and have experienced a lot of life in those 12 years. Yet on the occasion I see them, we soon talk about that long ago trip to New Orleans. There's still a sense of camaraderie, shared experience. We reminisce about the beignets, walks around Jackson Square, and listening to jazz at Preservation Hall. But mostly we talk about the light bulbs, even though we know it's not about the light bulbs. It has been said that the 2 most segregated places in America are places of worship and our own homes. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, across the border from Rock Hill in York County, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the home of Maya Angelou, and later Atlanta, Georgia, for 16 years before heading west in 1994. I realize now in all those years, I had never been invited to the home of any of my Black colleagues and friends. It wasn't a conscious omission or a slight, rather it reflected the gap in acceptance of me as a white person that still needed to be bridged. For to be invited into a home is an expression of intimacy and trust and a deepening relationship between people. On Martin Luther King Day, I'm reminded that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It also bends toward love, one person, one light bulb, one visit, one meal at a time. For this is the real indicator of progress: trust, love, and acceptance, and how far we have to go as a people and how far I have to go as a person. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. I have another reading to share this morning, a poem titled Perhaps the World Ends Here by Joy Harjo. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation and will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. The table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
January's outreach is for the Sumi Nangwa outreach program for our youth. This will happen in the spring. Each week we give away 25% of our Sunday plate offering to that project or organization. This includes all cash donations and underlined checks. The program is similar to the one that we did in New Orleans, and this is one we've been on a number of times. So I'd like to have you join me in the affirmation of gratitude and giving. Let us be grateful that we are able to give when we're able. It's a privilege. Let us be grateful for those that share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so we may learn from the generosity of others.
One of the reasons I was so pleased to be able to share those letters with you to reflect on our partnership with the congregation in New Orleans is to be reminded that as congregations, we never do this work alone, but we are part of this network of Unitarian Universalist congregations stretching back through history, looking forward to the future, doing this work together. And so when presented with the letters that were shared earlier, the current minister at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, the Reverend Terrence Strauss, she offered this observation. UUCA was not being thanked for a prophetic ministry. It was not our protests in the streets, nor in the halls of the Capitol, nor our physical presence at the March on Selma. No, it was our pastoral ministry that made the most difference to the King family and to the civil rights movement as a whole. We were simply helping a family in need during the greatest crisis they had ever known. And not by simply bringing a dish, she says. We were helping to organize food, lodging, and travel for their out-of-town guests coming to Dr. King's funeral. We helped them sort and answer the mountains of mail they were receiving from across the globe. This was an intimate level of neighborliness that you could only do if you were in deep relationship. The letters revealed something about the congregation that went beyond the news headlines, that it was a congregation invested in a deep and lasting relationship with their partners and neighbors in the struggle. A relationship that went beyond their minister or just a few dedicated volunteers, but extended to the church as a whole. These letters indicate the sense of trust that had developed between the King family and the congregation after many, many years of working together. And as the modern-day justice organizer Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us, we can only move together if we move at the speed of trust. And we build resilience and strength by building relationships. On this weekend, honoring the work and legacy of Dr. King, it is good to be reminded that no one, not even the most famous leaders out in front of all the microphones and marches, do their work in isolation. Any successful movement for change is not built upon the charisma of one person, but the network of relationships that spring up amidst and around the work like mushrooms after a rain, interconnected under the soil. This is good news, my friends, that this is how it works, because very few of us will ever match Dr. King for charisma. But all of us can cultivate relationships. Very few of us will ever stand at a podium before 100,000 people. But all of us can gather around a table, share a meal, and learn about one another's lives and joys and struggles, the ways we are similar and the ways we are different, and practice being the beloved community that we hope to build in the world. I don't think it's an accident that both of those letters mentioned food either, and the power of breaking bread together, the intimacy of a shared table. The first letter from Dr. King is a thank you for a dinner hosted by the congregation. He describes the dinner as having warmed his heart because it was for him an experience of beloved community, where all differences were reconciled and all hearts were in harmony with shared values. And in the second letter, food was mentioned as one of the ways the congregation supported the King family by providing meals for all of the guests and other family members that had come in town for the funeral. And underneath both of those letters, behind them, leading up to them, I have to imagine there were many, many other meals shared across tables, ideas traded over coffee, plans made over paper plates and napkins. Even the process of sorting mail is often something done at the kitchen table. I imagine this table somewhere in someone's house, piled high with letters, people sitting around over tea and coffee, thousands and thousands of notes of condolence that needed to be sorted. And then I realized there was more than just that. There were probably also hateful letters in there too. And the members who took on that task of triaging the mail, they often acted as this buffer to keep those poisoned arrows from hitting their mark. As the poet Joy Harjo points out so beautifully, the world is made at the kitchen table. As she says, it is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves and as we put ourselves back together again at the table. So it's no accident that systems of white supremacy did not want people of different backgrounds sharing a meal, sitting together. The sit-ins at the lunch counters, like the story we shared this morning about the Friendship Nine, these lunch counter actions, they were not just important because those were sites of segregation, but also because it was a space where people ate, where people could meet and mingle and make visible that common animal-human thread that binds us all together. Eating together reminds us that we are all human with needs, physical bodies, taking pleasure in food, the need to be fed. To maintain white supremacy, these common human activities needed to be segregated in order to perpetuate the myth of difference, of otherness, to justify unjust laws and practices, because friendships are made over meals. People meet and marry over dessert. Children learn to share. Keeping people separate at mealtime was critical. When the Unitarian Universalist minister James Reeb was attacked and killed in Selma, Alabama in 1965, he was leaving a Black-owned diner where he and two other colleagues had just had dinner. The three ministers had, in the minds of the white men who attacked them, transgressed that important social boundary of segregation by spending time in Black spaces. Not only were they ministers marching for civil rights during the day, but they were bringing that spirit into their everyday activities like eating together, living in such a way that would tear apart the fabric of a society built on keeping people in their assigned roles. As Dr. King said in the eulogy he gave for Reeb, he was a witness to that truth that men of different races and classes might live, eat, and work together as brothers. The letter that Dr. King wrote to the minister of the Atlanta congregation, the first letter we heard, it was dated March 15th, 1965. March 15th was the same day that Dr. King delivered the eulogy for Reeb. Reeb had died just a few days earlier on March 11th. When Dr. King was writing to Reverend Pickett and thanking him for that dinner that they had shared that past January, there was much more going on underneath. To share a meal together in Atlanta, to create, even just for one night, a feeling of that beloved community across the dinner table, this was no small thing. People were being killed for that. It stood in stark contrast, that beloved community at the table, in stark contrast to the violence that they had all just that week endured. To bring people together when law and society try to keep them apart, that is never a small thing. Just this past week, an impressive new sculpture was unveiled on the Boston Commons in honor of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King, and I think we have a picture of it here. It's titled The Embrace. Boston was where they had met when they were both in graduate school, and the sculpture, this is the artist's rendering. That's not, I didn't have a picture of the sculpture itself in time to get it up here, but the sculpture evokes an image not just of the couple themselves embracing, but all of the people who marched arm in arm, who physically held each other together in the struggle. And the artist also wanted to explicitly embody Coretta Scott King's emphasis on the transformative power of empathy. Their shared belief that love was the ultimate tool against injustice. Thank you. Empathy is built across the table. And so on this weekend, I, like so many others, find myself wondering, what do we need to do now to break down the barriers of racism that still exist? How do we now dislodge those tangled and tenacious thorns of white supremacy from our national psyche? What march do I need to attend? What prophetic voice do I need to hear? What leader do I need to follow who will explain how to move forward in this moment? But reading these letters, these personal notes of gratitude and grace, they remind me that everyone in this struggle is always just a human being doing the best they can, holding on to one another, learning to trust, leaning into the relationships that sustain and strengthen them, sharing a meal as they share the work. So today, when I think of the justice work that we are currently involved in as a congregation, I can see how often that thread of sharing food and sharing meals remains a core part of the work. I mean, think of the warming centers and the hospitality teams, for example, right? That core project of reaching out and cooking for each other during the storm. I think of the meal that members of our justice and equity team shared with Christina and Luz and their daughter Sophia, the family that we are helping get settled here, who we met at the migrant shelter on the border, who visited us here in Santa Barbara, who ate with us, and who are now connected with the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Stockton as they await their hearing in immigration court, becoming deeper in relationship with them, accompanying each other in life, building relationships with other congregations who are also on this journey. And of course, when we go to Hopi, we bring food with us to help sustain the elders, to reach out, and the food becomes this doorway into homes. It becomes a place where we can connect over our shared humanity. When we go back to the migrant shelter at La Cobina next weekend with more of our youth on another trip, we will be cooking them breakfast, eating together again. The world is built at the table. But I hope that we don't just stop there at the organized efforts of this congregation as a group. You don't have to join a committee or go to a meeting to do this sacred work of sharing a meal. Although if you want to join a committee or go to a meeting, feel free. But every one of us can invest in building relationships, becoming a trusted friend in the struggle for justice. It can start with a simple cup of coffee and a desire to get to know each other. Trust is built over time. More than one cup of coffee, my friend. And if you don't drink coffee, that's okay. You can drink tea. But more than one cup, right? Coming back to the table again and again till people realize you're not just in it to check off a box to accomplish an objective. You're not just in it to instrumentalize the goal, but to be partners in the journey, to be human beings struggling in this world together. When we eat together, we set aside just for a minute our agendas and our strategies. We compliment the cook. We reveal our vulnerabilities, explain what we might be allergic to, explain our preferences and our needs. We might make a mess. We risk spilling things. And then we clean it up together. That's part of the deal of sharing the table. And no dinner goes exactly as planned, but we take it all in with gratitude. So come to the table, my friends. Invite others to join you. It's there, not just in the streets, that the world changes. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Let us sing together our closing song. It's number 134, Our World is One World. Please rise in body and spirit and join us wherever you are joining us from. stay right up here with me, Justice Choir. Keep me company. If you want to, you can reach out and take the hand of someone near you if you have permission, or put your hands over your heart if you prefer, or just hold them open. However it is that you get connected to each other, to this larger love that flows among us. And as you go out into this beautiful and heartbreaking and rainy world, may the light of love shine upon you, out from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And let us call out a blessing.
Oh.